On July 11th, 1923, something happened that has never happened since in Major League Baseball history. Can you guess what it was? The Reds were in Philadelphia for a doubleheader. As was normal at that time, there were 2 umpires present. However, the umpire behind the home plate, Ernest Quigley, was hit by a foul ball in the second inning of the first game. This was a foul ball off the tip of the bat of Jimmy Cavani. For some reason, Quigley's head was turned. The ball hit Quigley just behind his left ear, knocking him onto the ground unconscious. Well, Quigley survived. In fact, Quigley went back to umpiring in early August of the same year. I tell you, baseball men were made of different stuff back then. But the significant part is the rest of the doubleheader. Cy Furman, the second umpire, umpired the entire second game of the doubleheader by himself, as in all alone. As far as I am aware, that is the last time a Major League Baseball game was umpired by a single umpire. Can you imagine what baseball would be like with only one umpire? I mean, it's hard to imagine what it would be like with less than 4. Think about it, it's a complicated sport. You've got a whole bunch of different things happening at once. So if you've only got one guy, how is he going to get into position to make sure that the runner tags up when the catch is made in the outfield? Remember, we talked about that the other day. How is he supposed to call a guy out or safe at second on an attempted stolen base if he's behind the plate calling balls and strikes? And what in the world do you do with a ball that's hit deep down one of the foul lines? But that's the way that it was for a huge chunk of baseball history. Actually, the double umpire system, as it was called, started in the 1888 season. It was sort of a novelty back in those really old days, until 1898 that is. For some reason, the National League decided to switch to a 2-umpire system in almost every game in 1898 and 1899. And then, during the winter 1899 meetings, the owners went back to 1 umpire. The National League made the conscious decision to abolish the double umpire system during those winter meetings. Now, if you ask me, this was the worst decision by baseball owners in the history of the sport, and I know that's saying a lot. Most foolish decisions by the men who are in charge of baseball get support from somebody, somewhere, but this one simply didn't. No matter where you look, sports sections in 1900 unanimously opposed the single umpire system. I think that this was done in the name of saving money, but then again, those were the days of foolish decisions in the name of saving money. These were the days of contraction, when the National League terminated ball clubs in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Louisville, and Cleveland. There were a lot of bad decisions made back then, and they led directly to the formation of the American League. Now, you probably don't know much about the 1900 season, and I'll tell you, there's a reason why. I didn't know much about that season, actually, not until I completed a 1900 replay a few years back. It was an extremely controversial season, that's for sure, with lots of allegations of cheating by the Brooklyn Superbas, who repeated as champions. The real problem, of course, was the single umpire system. Again, if the umpire is watching the ball, he can't see the runner cutting third base on his way home. Now, one thing that we need to remember about baseball history, one thing that seems to get lost in these debates, is that the sport really has not changed that much over the years. Seriously, the sport is not significantly different to what it was in 1900. The biggest differences off the top of my head are the foul strike rule, which came about in 1901. And aside from that, you have stuff like the designated hitter or the elimination of spitballs and stuff like that, rules that guys would break all the time anyway. But it's different than other sports, right? It's not like American football where teams used to run the single wing and run the ball in every down. It's not like basketball where there were completely different rules about how you could even advance the ball. It's not like hockey where you could only pass backwards. It's not like soccer where you also could only pass backwards for a certain amount of time and where the offside rule was completely different. And honestly, that's what makes this story about 1900 and going to 1 umpire just completely bizarre and unbelievable. But that is the way that it was, and it was that way for years, till around 1909 when things started to change. Now, my respect goes to Cy Furman, who was the last man ever to umpire an entire Major League Baseball game all by himself.